Hi, and welcome to Chapter 2. We're going to look at developing oral communication skills. Here we go. Certain forms of communicating, as we said, orally, face to face. You can also do that orally in group discussions, telephone conversations, speeches, instructions, recording, and also voice recognition software. Right? So in business, because this course is about business, it's one that's used the most, right? Oral communication of the three that we saw last class or in chapter 1, this is the number one, oral. So it is used to hire and to see what there is the abilities. It is also used to manage, solve problems, and to instruct. Also one-on-one, it's the highest importance. You always have to test your listening skills when you are one-on-one. The dialogue also without interruption. In other words, when someone is talking, the ability to listen and gather information without saying a word. And also it creates tone and atmosphere when someone is talking one-on or two people are talking in a conversation one-on-one. On the phone, you have to be a little bit more clear. Every sound you hear, sometimes if you cough or clear your throat, it makes some certain sounds on the phone that are caught. So you have to be very clear when you're on the phone. You also have to talk slower and have a nicer, warm transfer of information. And also in conversations on the phone, sometimes when you don't talk for 5 seconds, it's called dead air. It looks like you're not, there's nothing being said for minutes or sometimes even longer than that. And you have to be very clear to identify who you are on the phone, and you always have to prepare before. So if you're working in sales, in business, and you have to make a conversation or you need to call a customer, or you're even your manager and you got to discuss certain things, you've got to be prepared before you go into that. And that's the same thing with voicemail. So when you leave a message with voicemail or you have the message there or when you're leaving a message, it's very important that you're clear on whom the customer or the person is calling. So, or you leave a message that is recorded, or when you leave a message, you need to make it clear who you are, who you're calling for, and it's always got to be very formal language. And most important part, why are you calling? So if you look at in the workplace, there's constant communications, or you need to have always a very good dialogue with your coworkers. So let's look at some little setups that I have here, right? So why this model? With this model, I apologize, you will go faster, real sporty. But unfortunately, what interests me is safety. My wife is pregnant with our second child. So you can see that there was a certain break of communication here. The man on the right certainly did not listen to the man on the left, who is the customer wants to buy a car, what it is. So in turn, he goes, let's look at it this way. These are two top models. One is sporty version and the other is packed with safety features. Which one would interest you? Right? So wow, the sporty one is sharp, but my wife is expecting our second child. So safety features would be very important right now. So the point here is you've got to inquire, you've got to ask questions. Here's another scenario. Your price is high compared to Best Buy, but and here the worker at Best Buy, the sales associate interrupts him and says, you first went to my competitor and now you come back to get a lower price. So yes, the man on the left does not work at Best Buy, probably at some other store. And the man turns around and says, or the customer turns around and says, as I was about to say, I came back because I thought the service was better here. Not anymore. Can I speak to your manager? Let's try again. Here, a better communication orally. Your price is high compared to Best Buy, but your after-sales service is exceptional. Yes, we have an in-store 2-year guarantee where if anything goes wrong, we will replace it with the latest model. And customer turns around and says, great. So you can see that this conversation going back and forth is clearer, right? And he says, so our initial cost might be inexpensive, but with the guarantee, we have the best price. So then there, we talk about nonverbal communication. This is the most important thing in communication, is to hear what is not said, right? So here we go. If you look at this picture here, the most important thing in communication is to hear what is not said. What do you think the man on the left is saying to the man on the right? Certainly not this, right? Of course, Charlie, I am having a great day, and I'm very, very happy. Doesn't it show? There's some sarcasm here for sure, but guarantee that this is not what you get when you look at it this way. You certainly would think of something else, right? Okay, so nonverbal communication, it is estimated that almost 65% of communication in general is nonverbal, right? And when we talk about nonverbal communication, we look at general appearance, and we have voice and silence is a big part of nonverbal. We have facial expressions and eye movement. We have posture. We touch and handshake, and we also have social distancing, right? As we know now, this is a big thing today about social distancing. You won't have anybody shaking hands for a very, very long time. And there's also paralanguage, in other words, where you have someone talking and you will have the ability to talk or express yourself in the same time or the same tone or in the same characteristics. So the one thing that you would do is voice. So tone and speed influences the messages, no doubt about it. Strong and affirmative voice equals credibility. If you talk weak and slow like this, then nobody could hear you. And you don't know what the person is talking about. So you have to be clear when you talk, and you have to break down your syllables. And like if I say the word credibility, if I say credibility, then you haven't broken down the syllables. But if I say credibility, you understand the word and what it means. And also tone demonstrates self-confidence. If you're able to raise your tone, lower your tone in conversation, it certainly helps, right? So here we go. Voice, however, overpowering a strong voice equals being superior, and sometimes when you do that, this is perceived as being angry or anger. But in tone, in general, silence also is very important. As we say here, you see here, silence is golden, and sharing information by not saying a single word is really important, and this is where nonverbals come into play a lot. You could even use silence in telephone calls for sure. So that's how this is possible. So silence, right? If you hesitate, it means something. If you take the time to think, that means you don't actually answering from memory. You're actually thinking before you're answering, and you reflect before answering. So the importance of silence, especially if you go for a job interview, if someone asks you a question and you know the answer to the question and you just talking right away like this, and the human resource manager would assume that you memorized the answer, and you don't really have an answer that's coming from your brain. It's just coming from memory, which is not the same thing. Then there is also kinesics, which is body language, right? And we'll talk about that in a second. But as you can see, I give you some little exercises along the way, like I did in chapter 1. So in chapter 2, you have this one here. Just answer the questions. I did put a form or a document in Omnivox, so you could just go get that, and you can do Omnivox or wherever it is. I think that's where I put it there in what we have in common, and you can go get the file, and you can answer the questions. You can just put 1 to 10, and if it's true or false. And let's keep going. So general appearance, like I said, there's going to be little exercises right through this PowerPoint, just like chapter 1. And we'll be doing that for all the chapters in this course. General appearance, you don't really have a second chance if you're looking for jobs, right? People analyze you and make up their minds in seconds, right? So here, has changed a lot when we come to how people dress versus how people used to dress in suits and ties. Nowadays, young executives, millennials, certainly are more relaxed in their dress. Also, facial expressions, when we talk about nonverbals, right? This is the most expressive part of your body, your eyes certainly. So eyes express many, many emotions, as you can see here, right? Try to determine what these are. you can pause and you can just write down what you think each set of eyes, what are they saying to you, right? Also, posture plays a very, very big part in how you stand. Here again, take a look at all four. And what do you think these four different postures are saying about the person there? Confidence, lack of confidence, anger, power, all these things. And also touch, right? Haptic, this is called haptic communication, signifying appreciation. And sometimes shaking hands is not acceptable. And I can tell you right now, this is certainly not going to be universal anymore. No one is going to be shaking hands for years to come because of this pandemic that we're going through. So you won't be judged by their handshake, that's for sure. And I'm not going to expect you guys to stand up and shake your hands. I have this video also that you can look up on YouTube, and it's very interesting for you to look at this, and especially for women, because women always be perceived to be the weaker, and it's a good idea to take a look at this, and you'll have a very interesting subject when it comes to body language, and she is amazing, Amy Cuddy. It's a good idea to go in and do this, to watch the video. Also, space, as we know now, social distance, it's not something new. It's been around a long, long time, but now we certainly have a better understanding of what social space is and what we have to do. So social space is very important, and you know, social space is called proxemics, and this is the use of space. And you know, when I did this PowerPoint, it was a long time ago, way before the pandemic. So this information certainly is important today more than ever, right? So if we look at the four spaces here, right, if you can see the intimate space right there, the personal space, and you got the social space. So here we go. Right here you got your 2 feet or your 2 meters. This is what we've got to respect in our lives for at least another year going forward. We need to have always social space or even public space, but not personal, and certainly not intimate if somebody is in your intimate circle. So here are some ways to learn and influence people through nonverbal communication. If you look at these 5 here, what are they saying and how are they saying it, right? So you look at that and you could read it for yourself and you could have an understanding of what that is. Okay, so let's keep going. Again, you can pause the screen at all times. Limitations, right? Limitations about nonverbal. It can reinforce verbal communication. Can be very contradictory. In other words, your nonverbals won't be giving signs of what you're thinking. It's the opposite. And most people will always believe the nonverbal over the verbal. So no matter how you look sometimes or what you say, they will believe the opposite of what you are in the nonverbals, right? Subjective also, everybody sees it differently, and that's really important, certainly, okay? Everybody looks at things differently, and when it comes to nonverbal communication, everybody does that too. So reading body language is certainly a social skill, and here I just put some examples. You tell me which one is competence. Which one is the most competent of these 3, right? Which face expresses the most competence, and in this case it would be face number 2. What about this one? Dominance. Which face expresses the least dominance in this scenario? It would certainly be the first face. And here's another one, extroversion, being extroverted. So here again, which faces expresses the most extroversion? And again, it would be the first face. And last one, trustworthiness, I should say, apologize. Which face expresses the least trustworthiness, or the most? And the least would be, again, number 1. Okay, so here again, pause the screen and answer these questions on your sheet that I posted for you. And we look at speech also, speech, how important speech is when it comes to communicating, and how you talk out and how you talk and how you enunciate, right? Enunciation is really, really important. But speech is about volume, pitch, tone, tempo, if I talk fast or talk slow, enunciation, and pronunciation. So let's look at enunciation. Enunciation is someone that is very distinct in talking and extremely clear. Okay, so if you look at pronunciation, incorrect pronunciation and correct pronunciation, it really makes a difference when the word of the meaning of the word itself. So here, pronunciation refers either to the sound that the speaker gives to letters or letters combinations that make up a word, and so on. And you also have implicit when you talk, when you are implicit pronunciation, and so this means that you're expressing implied words, which is not directly expressed, and it's mostly suggestion. So if you look at, go ahead, enjoy that cookie, or give me your phone number, right? It could mean many, many different things. But if you say it explicitly, fully and clearly expressed, there is no room for confusion. So if I would say, go ahead, enjoy that cookie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Or if I say, why would you mind giving me your phone number? You know exactly, again, what I'm saying here. Okay, another little exercise. Just finish this off and just fill in the blanks and as much as possible. So the speaker's intentions were not made implicitly or explicitly. Answer the questions for the 4 that you have there. And let's finish off this with active listening. Right? So active listening is listening for enjoyment. You always do that when you are listening because you enjoy it. You always listen better. And when something is tough to listen, sometimes maybe a lesson like this, you're not going to listen as well. And this is why I do the YouTube videos. So I know I talk fast sometimes and my tone is very quick or my tempo, but you can slow it down just by stopping the tape or the video and going back. So active listening is you're listening for enjoyment, listening to obtain information, listen to understand, to learn, to respond. That's the most important part also about active listening. Enjoyment, information, understand, learn, and respond, right? So to become an active listener, we tend to remember 10% of what we read, 20% of what we hear, 30% of what we see, 50% of what we see and hear, 80% of what we say, and 90% of what we say while taking notes. So notes are really, really important to take. So this is the listening dilemma. We speak at a high rate, but we can only hear at a lower rate. So this gives us a lot of extra time. And what do we do with this time causes confusion in our brains, right? So in many cases, what's good listening tips? Paraphrasing, repeating the message, probing, asking questions, clarifying, and remember the important points of the message for future application. And this has got to do with remembering the verbs. The verbs are really important to remember when someone is talking to you. Right? So nonverbal listening tests, here you go. So answer as many of the following questions as you can in the next 5 minutes. So you could do the test and you have 1 page and 2 pages. So again, here you can pause the screen and do the test accurately. It'll give you an understanding of what you can do right in the next 5 minutes. Right? Again, just pause. I won't pause it, but you can. And the listening module, really, we talked about this before also, but you got the hearing, listening, interpreting, and retaining. And you can see it this way here. Okay, so that's very important. That you can have questions like this in the exam, which is coming up real soon. And to finish off, just the end of the chapter 2, right? Write a paragraph for the next class or fill it in on the exercise sheet. All the exercises should go on the same sheet in chapter 2. Great. So you can pause this and you can write a paragraph about this, what this means, and what skills covered in this section do you think employees must use to make these video conferences productive. So read the chapter, read the paragraph, and then answer that question. The best of your knowledge is really important. Great. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much, and we'll see you soon.